All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show, Winning Digital Customers. I'm Howard Tiersky, and happy Chinese New Year's. Pardon me. You know, you thought the holiday season was over when we had a Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year's, but actually, it's really been the holiday season lately. We celebrated Martin Luther King's birthday with a special show. We celebrated President's Day with a special show. We celebrated Valentine's Day with a special show. And now today, I wanted to do a show for Chinese New Year's, really as an opportunity to think a little bit about China. Let's just talk about China and why China is something that every business, and I realize I have viewers from all around the world, but the predominance of viewers of this show tend to be in the U.S. and mostly U.S., United Kingdom, and a few places like that. So speaking to that audience, I would say, I think that many businesses are not thinking enough about China and thinking about China as an up-to-date way as possible, as the powerhouse that they are, and the impact that they're likely to have on all of our businesses in the coming years. So I want to just take a few minutes in honor of Chinese New Year, which was last Friday, by the way. But if you know anything about the culture in China, Chinese New Year is really a holiday that lasts for, like a month. You know, a lot of China shuts down for the better part of a month. Good luck ordering anything from China between about late January to, mid-late February. And everyone takes off and spends time with their families. We don't even have quite the equivalent in the United States of the level of kind of rest and partying that they have in China around Chinese New Year's. So let's just talk a little bit about China, and especially in the digital realm, because China is really a powerhouse in the digital space, maybe more so than some of us might realize in the US. And there's that famous cover from years ago from the New Yorker, and now I know they sell posters of it, The New Yorker's View of the World. And of course, I realize you're not all New Yorkers. I consider myself a New Yorker, even though I live just outside New York now in New Jersey. My office is in New York, so I think that still entitles me to say I'm a New Yorker. But in any case, we have this view of the world. This is supposed to be a map of the world from a New Yorker's perspective, right? You've got Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue, the East River, and then beyond that, you've got those other parts of New York, and then the rest of the country, and then somewhere in the distance, you've got Africa, France, whatever. And I don't even see China on this map, right? And we tend to have that mindset ourselves, right? The stuff that's closest to us is the largest in our minds. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about China, because I think it's important that we recognize, first of all, China is about the same size as the United States. I pulled this map off the internet. I can't promise for its precision from a cartographical perspective, but I have to tell you, I imagine China is this place that was, land-wise, much larger than the United States. But actually, they're similar to the United States, maybe a little bit larger, but similar to the United States in terms of their total land size. But their population is roughly 4 times that of the United States, right now at about 1.8 billion people. Now, of course, a lot of people know that. They know that China has more people than the United States. But I think there's also often a mindset about China that it's way behind the United States. And maybe many of you have updated your thinking there. Part of my goal here is to give you some stats and statistics and figures about China, just to prompt your thinking around where it might be something that you want to accelerate your thinking around your business and around your digital business. So from an e-commerce perspective, a decade ago, China accounted for less than 1% of the global e-commerce market. Today, they are the world's largest e-commerce market. In other words, sales in China, they actually represent 40%, more than 40% of all e-commerce sales in the world, more than the US. And with a volume of approximately $2 trillion. And by the way, the statistics, there's different statistics. Someone might say $1.8 billion, and $1 trillion. And what you count as an e-commerce sale can be, I did a whole video on looking at, in fact, we should do a live cast on this topic, but I did a whole video, which is available for the purchasers of the Winning Digital Customers book, my book. We have a whole website for people who buy the book. It contains all kinds of additional training materials, PDFs, ebooks, templates. Anyway, one of the videos I did for that private site was about metrics, and how, metrics that you think are these objective metrics like your conversion rate or your traffic are actually have a variety of highly subjective components. It depends how you measure. And so I did a whole video talking about that, because bear in mind that if you're comparing two different metrics, like the conversion rate of two different websites, you may not be measuring the exact same thing unless you're carefully checking how those statistics were measured. Not because anyone's trying to game it, but just because there are some different choices you can make. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that in detail now, but I just mentioned about all these statistics that there's different sources, and sometimes they have slightly different numbers, and it may be because they're measuring it in slightly different ways. But in any case, let's just stick with these numbers, because all I'm really trying to do is give you a sense of relative size. So the e-commerce volume in China, in other words, this is the purchasing within China, whether it's from China or from somewhere else, is about $2 trillion. And that's a number from 2019. I didn't find a 2020 number. But that's up 27% from 2018. So clearly, and that's, of course, we all know that e-commerce shot up further in 2020 because of coronavirus. I don't have an updated statistic for 2020, but I think it's reasonable to assume that this number is substantially greater now. And just to put that in perspective, the 2020 number in the US was 21%. In other words, just to be clear, 21% of the US retail sales come from e-commerce. Okay. As you'd imagine, given its size, they're handling more transactions every year than France, Germany, Japan, United Kingdom, and the United States combined. They are also a powerhouse when it comes to e-commerce platforms and properties. In other words, I've been talking up till now about their power as a purchaser of goods, whether they're from within China or outside of China, but also some of the most powerful, large-scale e-commerce and social media platforms in the world are from China. Interestingly, more than half of all of Chinese e-commerce comes from just 4 companies, and perhaps similar in the US, where we have Amazon, that's such a dominant player. Of course, there's a huge number of companies doing e-commerce in the United States, but you see some concentration at the top. China has the same. The 4 largest companies there would be Alibaba. And by the way, some of these companies have many properties. So when we say, Alibaba, there's the main Alibaba site where you buy wholesale, there's AliExpress, and they have a whole bunch of other businesses that they own. If you're not familiar with Alibaba, you got to get familiar with Alibaba. I believe they are now the largest e-commerce property in the world. Taobao, Alibaba, Tmall. So I see Alibaba's on there twice, so that's probably a mistake. But in any case, you have that kind of concentration. And Alibaba, valued at $550 billion, and is growing at a faster rate than Amazon right now. So very, very successful e-commerce property. Huawei, you've probably heard that name because they've been in the news in the US a lot because of questions of whether their products are somehow spying on the US. And I really don't have any opinion or knowledge about that. But suffice to say, we don't see their brand in the United States very much compared to, say, Samsung, for example, or other brands of mobile smartphones that we may be more familiar with. But they are now the largest supplier of telecommunications equipment in the world and the second largest manufacturer of smartphones. So if that's not a brand and a company you're familiar with, you may have a little bit of that New Yorker's view of the world, right? or the American view of the world. Because if you look at it from a global perspective, they are an absolute powerhouse. 33 million smartphones just in the fourth quarter of 2020, 6th largest vendor in the world. So a major, major player, obviously Chinese company. WeChat, another brand which everybody in the digital space needs to be familiar with. WeChat is absolutely dominant, not only in China, but in a lot of Asian countries. And as we talked about, these are some markets that are much larger than the US. 1.17 billion users, almost a billion daily users. So you can see how their users are using this on a daily basis. It's built into their life. And WeChat is a little bit of a combination of, obviously from the name WeChat, you might think, well, obviously it's a chat platform, and it is, right? It's comparable to something like, iMessage or Skype, right? You can both do phone calls, video calls, text with people, but it's really much more than that. It is also kind of a platform like Facebook, many companies, and it also is an e-commerce platform, and it also is a payment platform. So think Facebook plus PayPal plus Skype, and now you're starting to get there. In fact, there are some companies that do a lot of business in China that do more, that you can have a WeChat page, you can have a WeChat presence with a whole bunch of pages where you can post videos and other things like that. So maybe add YouTube into the mix as well, right? Think YouTube plus Facebook plus those other things I mentioned. And there are companies that do much more business and have much more traffic to their WeChat pages than they actually do to their regular websites. So it's become that important. Your presence on WeChat is critical if you're facing the Chinese market, just in terms of people understanding what are your products, what are your services, those types of things. And furthermore, as it's a dominant payment platform. There's Alipay, and you can pay through WeChat. And actually, I had the opportunity to spend some time in Beijing before COVID, a year and a half ago or whenever it was, with my daughter. And first of all, if you've not been to China, you must go. I've done business in China for many years. I used to have a team, software development team in China, and it's a wonderful place, wonderful people, great food, amazing, beautiful country, and extremely cosmopolitan. Now, of course, depends where you go, right? There are scenic, tranquil roads you can drive down that are filled with farming villages and things like that. But if you go to Beijing or Shanghai, you will feel like you are in, a cross between, if you're in the main downtown areas, Beverly Hills, Las Vegas. You have all the high-end shops. You have huge skyscrapers, amazing architecture, and you may know all this. But I just want to make sure you have your view of China is truly updated. And the thing I was going to say about when my daughter and I went there, the first night we arrived, we got in kind of late, but not that late. It was maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Of course, from a time zone perspective, we were like all over the place. And we hadn't done any currency conversion yet, so I didn't have any Chinese money. But anyway, it didn't matter, because we were wandering around and my daughter was hungry. And so we went into a little shop, and they were selling like these, I don't really know what you call them, but they're almost like little pastries or little bakery. I forget what they're called. But anyway, she was hungry, and we're like, okay, we'll take some. So this place did not take cash. They did not take credit cards. The only thing they would take is if you would pay them through WeChat or Alipay. That was the only way to pay in this store. So that gives you a sense of how dominant some of these platforms are. And of course, I had not, I didn't have I didn't have that set up at the time. So I couldn't pay. Couldn't buy. It was probably $2 item. I had no way to buy it. They wouldn't take American currency. They wouldn't have taken Chinese paper money, even if I'd had it. Those were the only ways that they accepted payment. So, that gives you just a sense. I tell you that story just to give you a sense of how dominant some of these platforms are in China. Imagine if a store only took Apple Pay. That would be kind of like the equivalent. TikTok. Now, of course, TikTok's another brand that, huge social media platform, especially with the younger kids. I know my kids, I have 5 kids, and they range from age 8. My 8-year-old's not on TikTok, but everyone else from my 10-year-old on up to my 19-year-old, TikTok is probably the main social media platform. TikTok and Instagram. And I would say over the last, if you went back a few years, it was mostly Instagram, and now it's mostly TikTok. They're on both places, but TikTok is a hugely dominant social media platform. And many people there may be more awareness now that it's owned by China, because Donald Trump made a big issue out of it, and the ownership of TikTok and concerns about political issues. Prior to that, probably a lot of people in the U.S. weren't even aware that TikTok is owned by a Chinese company. Of course, it's not only in China and the U.S. It's in over 150 countries. It's another platform with over 1 billion users. And similarly, 1 billion monthly active users. So these aren't all just people who signed up, but they're people who are incorporating TikTok into their daily lives. Obviously, we have a huge number of people in the U.S. creating content, great, huge influencers and celebrities and sports figures creating content on TikTok. It's a major platform, and it's really a break, because if you look at all the other major successful social media platforms in the United States, going back all the way to MySpace, but I mean, in modern times, AOL, but then, in truly modern times, Facebook, Google Plus, if you want to count that, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. These are all American companies. These are all Silicon Valley companies for the most part. And then TikTok comes on the scene, Instagram, and then TikTok comes on the scene as a Chinese company. So now the fastest growing, I believe TikTok is the fastest growing. Snapchat would be another example of a US-based social media network. And TikTok is, should be, I think, one of the most fast growing, if not the fastest growing social media network in the US, and it is Chinese. So again, just want to make sure that you're bearing in mind the dominance. China is not this distant thing, way over on the other side of the country. They're now running our largest social media, or our fastest growing anyway, social media platform in the United States. So I really just wanted to welcome you to the Year of the Ox. You should make sure you know, given the importance of China, that this Friday began the Year of the Ox. Our friends in China should be starting to come back to work sometime in the next week or so, or two, depending. And I don't know exactly what your business is, but I think you just need to make sure that you're thinking about China, because the largest market in the US, one of the largest creators of technology, they run some of the largest e-commerce and digital platforms in the world, including the fastest growing social media network in the United States. They have some of the largest suppliers of smartphones in the world. And they have the largest population, obviously, in the world. They're doing more e-commerce business in China than anywhere else in the world. We like to think in the US, sometimes we get in our mindset that we're number one in all these areas. But actually, China is fat, and all of this in China is faster growing. As fast as digital is growing in the United States, it's growing faster in China. So as it becomes a more and more important, more and more part of our lives and our businesses, I would suggest every business that has any significant scale. I mean, I get that if you're a bakery, with one location in suburban Cincinnati, you probably don't need a China strategy. I'll grant you that. But I'm also guessing that most people who are watching me right now are probably not running a single bakery, but you're probably someone at a good-sized company, executive in IT or marketing or operations. And if that's who you are, you should have a China strategy. Even if your strategy is to do nothing right now, you shouldn't have a default China. Why would we think about China? That really, at this point, I think we're past that. Now that we're in the Year of the Ox, you need to be thinking about, what should we be thinking about China? Should we be creating partnerships in China? Should we be making a point to sell our products in China? If we're doing that, are we on WeChat? Do we have WeChat pages? That's critical. Also, what are we buying from China? Are we using Alibaba to source products where we can get them at a competitive price? How are we relating to all these different platforms in China? And what can we learn in our business? So often we look at competitive examples, other big digital companies, other e-commerce players, as sources of inspiration, sources of ideas for how to improve our own digital businesses. Are you looking at the ones in China? Because they're some of the biggest, fastest growing, and most successful. I know it can be more difficult to spend time on sites that aren't native English language sites, although many sites, certainly sites like Alibaba and WeChat, or apps like WeChat, have, they work in English. You don't have to speak Chinese. And even if you're looking at other companies that are in Chinese, obviously you can use Google Translate to get a reasonably good understanding of how these digital properties work. You should be looking at them. You should be familiar with them, because they're growing, they're becoming dominant, and because, they're in many cases very innovative. And anytime that we do projects here in the US looking to innovate, we always want to avoid reinventing the wheel, and we want to look around and see what others are doing. Don't forget to not only look at the US, or not only just the US and Europe, look to China. It's where some of the greatest growth is. So that was my purpose today, to wish you a happy Chinese New Year's. I realize most of you are probably not celebrating. So really, I want to create awareness around Chinese New Year, but more importantly, China in general is an opportunity for you. So hopefully this has been helpful and interesting. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you're doing. Is your company doing anything in China? What are you learning from any experiences that you have in China? Feel free to post those in the chat for others to see. I thank you for watching and listening, and look forward to seeing you next time.